Good morning, and welcome to the second meeting of the Public Safety Subcommittee of the Finance and Appropriations Committee. Today we're going to start by reviewing several bills that have been referred to Finance and Appropriations from the Courts of Justice Committee. This subcommittee will recommend whether or not to report the bills for the full committee later this morning. Patrons who present their bills to the subcommittee do not have to appear before the full committee meeting. As a general rule, bills heard in the Senate Finance and Appropriations subcommittees will only receive public testimony during the subcommittee rather than the full committee. And for bills that have already been considered by a standing committee, public comments should be limited to the fiscal impact of the bills rather than the policy implications. The subcommittee will then hear from the Secretary of Veterans and Defense Affairs on their budget proposals, especially $30.5 million for startup operations for the two new Veterans Care Centers. And then we'll hear from Jackson Miller, Director of the Department of Criminal Justice Services, who will present on community violence reduction grants. Stopping the cycle of community violence has been a priority of this subcommittee in recent years, with a focus on youth prevention efforts. Finally, if time allows, staff will review budget amendments submitted by members. We'll start by hearing the four bills before us. Katie, could you call the first patron?
Senator Head.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Members of the committee, I have Senate Bill 145. This bill was introduced to try to solve a problem for Roanoke College. They have their law enforcement on the campus are SCOPs, and there was a wrinkle in their relationship with local law enforcement and their ability to provide and work with some of their rifles that they needed to do so in the event of an emergency. They were going to be restricted from doing that, and the reason I'm stammering a bit here this morning is that literally 90 seconds before you gavelled in, I was having a conversation with DCJS representatives, and we appear to have come up with a solution in the immediate that might render this bill unnecessary, but might also make it a more prudent action to take to amend it just to clarify what the solution is because this was apparently an authority that DCGS already had to allow this, and we've got this resolved for Roanoke College, but we're trying to decide whether we should go forward with this or not. So I'm a little bit flummoxed this morning because this was literally a last-minute decision on their part, and I'm wondering if we might hear from them with their suggestion, and that if we might understand that there would be an amendment coming before full committee. If you would entertain that, be glad to have that ready and can make those amendments, which I think would be fairly simple. Or if you'd rather it just go away and we take another stab at it as we need to next year.
Why don't you just very briefly, just one more time, the main purpose of the bill?
The main purpose of the bill is that Roanoke College, because they are SCOPs, there were restrictions on what they could do as far as training for their patrol rifles for classroom training. Everybody that's on that police force they are all retired police officers, and because of where they exist in Salem and the remote nature of that area, and they have a memorandum of understanding with the Salem Police Force, and in the event that there were any sort of an emergency crisis situation either on campus or in the town of Salem, the MOU that they have said that they could back each other up, and that would be fine. The problem was that because of their status as SCOPs and the training, they were limited on access to the patrol rifles, even though they all had far and away more training than was necessary for that. And so we were trying to then just put in code, this is okay for them to do in this very, very narrow circumstance. And that's why it's tailored in such a way that this would really only apply to Roanoke College. And again, I'm not even sure if the bill is going to be necessary or not. We just really haven't had time to sort through that this morning.
Well,
If that would be okay and we could carry it by for the week, I think by then we could either determine whether we've got language that's sorted out that everybody is very comfortable with, that would just clarify the position, and I think we may even make members of this committee more comfortable with where it was, or we'll strike the bill. And
Okay, I think I would suggest we carry it by just so you. Senator Marston,
Just one suggestion. I like the fact that they're all prior police officers with that kind of training. Guns, being able to, have a firearm would not be a new thing to them, and what have you. Might be good to discuss the idea that the only people that could do this are those with prior law enforcement experience. It seems to be it's 100% that way anyway.
Perhaps, and again, I'm open to anything. Just haven't had a chance to discuss this with the folks at Roanoke College to find out what their pleasure is on there. And again, and it may because of what we've heard from DCJS as we've been sorting this out, and they've been working to try to get this resolved, and just came up with a solution this morning on some things. And I think with that, truly by next week we'll know whether we even need to go forward with this or not. And so
Thank you, Mr.
I would
Chairman.
appreciate your indulgence to let it go by for the week. So, all right, thank you very much.
Katie, we run our next patron.
Senator Urban, if you want to go ahead and do your bill, and then if Senator DeSteff and Senator Obenchain aren't able to come, we can do them at full committee.
Okay, thank you, Madam Chair. Okay, this bill is SB 369, and I don't know if it's a line amendment or a substitute, but since the bill no longer involves foul, we're going to amend is it the title that gets amended?
Yes, Mr. Chair, it is a substitute, but it just struck foul from the title of the bill, so it didn't change the substance of the bill.
Okay. The bill itself I can describe. It has to do with the penalty for deliberately harming a companion animal. Right now it's a class 5, I believe I have, the penalty is more significant if you if the animal were to die with intentional tampering. And what this would do is align it with livestock, the penalty, so that if you were deliberately going after a companion animal that doesn't die, it would still be able to be sentenced. I believe as a class 5 felony, but the prosecutor and the judges would have some latitude to sentence at a lesser degree if they desired. I don't know if anyone has questions. This came from the courts committee that had recommended it unanimously, and we took out the foul out of it, just referring to companion animals, other companion animals. Is there any questions?
Mr. Chairman, the $50,000, that's a Woodrum amendment.
Oh, Senator Marston, yes, and that's why it's up here.
Okay, great.
Senator McDougal.
Mr. Chairman, are we making universal decisions, or are we doing these individually? I didn't know if Madam Chairman's here, if she's given us any direction on how many Woodrum committee amendments we're going to have, or we're going to do them individually, or what's going to happen when we move from here?
I'll defer to Madam Chair, but we were not given a limitation on how many of the bills that had a minimal fiscal impact we could consider, but she's right here, so let's see what the
Yes,
chair.
they're quite a number. I don't have the exact number, but it's a lot.
Ma'am,
Because as you know, all of the budget amendments that have been made, over half of the committee takes up all their money. So
So-
it's gonna be a lot.
Madam Chairman, I guess my question is, should we be moving Woodrum Amendment bills forward at this time, or should we be, as a group, waiting to see how many we have and then picking the best 5 or 3 or whatever direction that you give us?
I think we need to go on and move individually as we get to in the subcommittees, because a lot of them are coming.
Okay, so with that understanding that we can consider these bills individually, we have the bill that was recommended by courts committee. Is there a motion? Is there a second? Second. Okay, so we'll vote on SB 369. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, so that bill is recommend to the full committee. What's our next bill?
Mr. Chairman, if it's you all's pleasure, I can go ahead and present Senator DeStuff's bill. It's fairly straightforward. And if you all are comfortable, we can vote on it and check with him at full. So Senator DeStuff's bill, that's Senate Bill 367. This initially had a Woodrum impact, but in the Courts of Justice Committee, it was changed to establish a task force on fentanyl and heroin enforcement at the Department of Criminal Justice Services to study ways to enhance the ability of law enforcement officers throughout the Commonwealth to combat illegal manufacturing, importation, distribution of fentanyl, heroin, and similar controlled substances. One option we had discussed for this bill is, as it stands, the task force only has one member in the Senate, but 2 members of the House. And so the subcommittee may wish to recommend that there is an amendment to change that to 2 House members and 2 Senate members.
So moved. Second.
There's a motion and a second to amend the bill to for parity and representation. All in favor of the amendment, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, the bill's amended.
I checked my notes, and we do have room for several Woodrum amendments. We got room.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Okay, so we know what the bill is now, the task force. Was there anything more on the bill to report?
No, I have it down that the subcommittee recommends to report the bill with an amendment by a vote of 6-0. And with that, I think Senator Obenshain is planning to come, so maybe we can go ahead and move to the Secretary of Veterans and Defense Affairs until Senator Obenshain arrives.
Okay, we're joined by Secretary Craig Crenshaw, Secretary of Veterans and Defense Affairs, who has a presentation. So welcome, Mr. Secretary. Please come forward and share your presentation.
Good morning. Can you hear me? Okay, there we go. Good morning, Mr. Chairman, Madam Chair, members. Thank you for allowing me this opportunity to kind of show you what we're doing, and as we look forward to this year and within our secretary. And I'd like to, let me start by saying that thank you for your support already. I mean, I recognize that within our Commonwealth, there's a number of military members, citizens throughout. And so, and what you've done in the past and what you will do is very appreciative. One thing I'd like to leave here with is that we got a couple military fact, or actually military fact book, and a Virginia military-friendly book like we're going to leave with you. The reason I mention that now is that really kind of outlines what we've done and what's here available in Virginia, and to go to that goal that we seek to make Virginia the #1 place for our veterans to live, work, and raise a family. I mean, that's what we've been doing since day one, and we'll continue to do that. So I'd love to leave those with you, and you have a chance to just take a look and see what's going on within our military community. As we looked at the approach of this budget, we recognize that we're dealing with our citizens' funds, our money, their money, and so how do we best manage that? And so as we look at that, still that the beacon of being able to be the #1 state within the country, that was a focus. And so as we looked at what those numbers would be this year, the introduced budget is much smaller than it was last year. It's very focused, and overall it's less. And the reason for that, we recognize again, though, we can put things on target, and I will kind of go through what some of those are. But I think we're very focused and very pleased on how we're going to go forward with this. And so it really reflects that our operating for the 3 agencies that fall within the Secretariat, the Department of Military Affairs, your Department of Military Affairs, Department of Veterans Service, and our Veterans Service Foundation overall has a lower budget than it was last year. So let me start by addressing Department of Veterans Service. What I have highlighted here is just one where I like to show you that where we're operating at. This is DVS for the number of field offices, as well as I'll highlight from the last year we added additional field office in Arlington, as well as identifying our 2 additional care centers that we'll talk about later. Well, this is where our Department of Veterans Service is operating and doing great things within our Commonwealth. As it relates to our Veteran Care Center, as the introduced budget identifies, this is one where we've had opportunity to, one, open up a new care center, Jones and Quebecois, in Virginia Beach. And then additionally, we were able to change the name of our Roanoke Care Center to Davis and McDaniel, which were two heroes. Davis, a Medal of Honor recipient, and then Captain McDaniel is a POW. So that name had changed to, that center had been changed to Davis and McDaniel. We're looking this year to open up our last of our four, which is the Puller Center in Fauquier County. There's a $30.5 million within our general fund. I'm sorry, if you look at the general fund amount, $30,500,000. That really talks to the startup costs. And what that startup cost, which is $27 million of that, includes about 80% of the 80% of that cost for the people who work in the actual care center themselves. The additionally cost includes your medicine, your utilities, as well as some of the training that was done for their personnel, some of their training that's required in order to fill those jobs. So really, the large amount of that cost includes the personnel training, personnel. Addition to that, these care centers will include an additional 120 beds per care center, both in Virginia Beach and Fauquier County. So you're increasing the capacity within those two care centers. So as we just look at the upfront cost, startup costs, it's really about personnel. It's about taking care of the dollars for the individuals. And then the last $3.5 million of that is paid back with our treasury loans that was provided as well. That's the broad brush. We can go into the details. I have some of the experts here that kind of can back any detailed question that you may ask at this point.
Well, I did want to ask a question about the funding, because my understanding is that the Veterans Care Centers receive a higher insurance reimbursement rate from some providers like Medicaid that fund the existing care centers. And I was just wondering if any of the requested startup funding extends to cover ongoing costs once the centers are at or near capacity, or if any of the funds that cover expenses once the new Veterans Care Centers are fully operational.
Okay.
How will that work?
Steve or Tim? Yeah, please.
Steve Combs, Department of Veteran Services. The $30.5 million that's in the general fund, those are for startup costs. They're not for ongoing costs. What we project is that the Jones and Quebecois Veterans Care Center, Virginia Beach, that the Secretary referenced, will reach full staffing levels and full veteran resident levels, about 95% or greater occupancy, sometime in early 2025. We're projecting March of 2025. Our reimbursements lag a couple of months, so we're looking about the May time frame where expenditures and revenues will equal and look very, very, very close, and they'll be able to be self-sustaining from that point forward.
Okay, well, that's great to hear. Thank you. Are there any other members with questions about the previous section? Okay, please continue.
The next area I'll brief is our Veteran Benefit Service. This is $487,000. And really what this goes to is that our Veteran Benefit Service, that's the office that really just kind of takes on the responsibility of veterans coming in and getting their claims done. We recognize that that's really a key portion of just total veteran service support. As we looked at an investment, we need to do better. Right now, that being able to have that connectivity with big VA, being able to manage those accounts, being able to really have good visibility on their claims, we have to get a better IT service. This is antiquated. We've been doing business like this longer than we should have. So we're now taking the opportunity to improve within that process of having software that really addresses some of our concerns. I mentioned briefly about our IT as a focus of effort. One of the things that we are also looking at doing and have just kind of laid out a great program and moving forward is to be able to help our veterans as they transition from, at least a military serviceman, as they transition to a life outside of the uniform. And what we've kind of established looking forward is being able to have a gold standard digital hub. This is a program that, or I'll call it a program, but really it's an initiative where we can easily have a veteran to recognize the benefits that they have both earned and deserved, a way to make it easier for them. The idea is to have a system that has connecting tissues, where all services are available through a network. And to the point where we're able to have this on an app, if you can imagine that, being able to look at an app on a phone and able to set up appointments, connect services from education, from workforce, the whole business lines that DVS provides, have that available to our service members. So that's one that we're really focusing on. We think it's going to make a big difference as we move forward. A couple of items on the capital project. The Veteran Cemetery Construction Project, this is one where we, unfortunately, our cemeteries are getting full. And we recognize that we want to continue to take care of our veterans, and we have to expand it. And the way we do that is being able to receive money from the federal government through this particular first line there, where we're able to support whatever money that we have or they have, rather, that's going to initiate some of the startup of new land acquisition. So this is one that we've kind of done in the past, but this is the way we continue to support our veterans by increasing space. And this is one of those subjects that's kind of hard to talk about because you're talking about the death of a veteran and how you prepare that. And so this is one where we want to continue to be able to take care of them by having necessary facilities available. And then the last project on here is our support to our military women veterans memorial in Arlington. Right now we have outlined about $500,000 to support that cemetery or that memorial. And why this is so important, this is the opportunity for our women veterans to tell their story, to tell their contribution and what they've done to our military, and really kind of bring visibility to their lives. And I think this is one where just kind of it just makes sense and the right thing to do to bring visibility to our women veterans. I'll briefly discuss our Veteran Service Foundation. This is one where we've asked for $53,000, $500,000, and really what this does is allow us to able to manage those funds that we receive, raise the threshold of those money that we receive to supplement the veterans. And again, this foundation serves as that spot between what we're getting from what the DVS can provide and what the federal government can provide, is a way of subsidizing those benefits or those services. So what we actually hear is really just being able to increase that threshold due to the amount of funds that we're anticipating receiving. Our Department of Military Affairs, this is one that I'm sure everyone recognizes, that most of the funding for our Department of Military Affairs is non-general fund funding. Primarily comes from the federal government, and was just a great return on that investment of what we get from the federal government. But what's outlined here is that we have been operating in a system that really does not support today's climate. We're looking at being able to better support our guardsmen when they are called to state active duty, a software that are able to track and manage those type of operations, as well as probably just as important is being able to manage the federal corporate agreement programs. Right now, it is hard to do. We have the Cardinal system that does not support the needs of the Guard Force, and so this is one where we want to again bring up to standards, bring up to our reality, and this program here, or at least this initiative, that will allow us to bring that and be able to again manage those efforts much easier and smoother. To provide funding for our maintenance reserve, this is a non-general fund line, but again, just wanted to just kind of highlight it because of the importance of it, and how we, as the DMA, as I mentioned before, will continue to to work with our federal government in bringing funds to Virginia. And it's a good return on investment. As I have always been brief and really just kind of highlight that when we have money from the federal government, it's probably like a 1 to 3 ratio return on that. So it's a pretty good deal being able to get funding from the federal government. But what we're talking about here is really improving our readiness centers. The readiness centers are old, and this is an opportunity to make them more ready by updating the necessary facilities that has been there for a number of years without any real upgrade. It's another non-general fund amount where we're going to convert the Southwest Regional Readiness Center to a field maintenance shop. Again, this is a requirement based on what our capability is within the area, being able to manage those assets better, maintain them better within the Guard Force. And then the last one here, again, is a construct of the grid emergency backup generator at the State Military Reservation in Virginia Beach.
If I could ask a question about the readiness centers. The Southwest one that you want to convert to a regional maintenance shop, I was just wondering how many readiness centers there are and where the Southwest region will be covered then if we convert to the maintenance center.
Okay. I'll ask General Rink if we can answer that.
Board leaders, Major General Frank Adjutant General of Virginia, so we have 40 plus readiness centers throughout the Commonwealth. That regional readiness center in Abington will support our Southwest region of facilities, which is a large density of our military formations, primarily with the 116th Infantry Brigade Combat Team and other logistics units that are arrayed in the valley.
Thank you. Thank you, sir.
Okay. Mr. Chairman.
Senator Marsden.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The emergency generator microgrid, $49 million.
I was thinking the same thing.
That's a pretty staggering sum. That must be a very large project. Could you go into the details on that?
It's federal dollars, but well.
Is it federal dollars?
Yes, federal dollars.
Non-general fund.
Okay.
Yeah, it's.
Clarification, it's not just the generator, but all of the state military reservation on a microgrid that will set conditions where it can be independent from external power generation in the event we have catastrophic power failure in that area. So that's part of our resiliency within our facilities.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And this last slide, I'll say out loud as well. This is federal dollars, is $30 million. Again, this is one where we recognize that there's investments being made within the Coastal Virginia Offshore Wind Project. Part of that initiative and project goes through our state military reservation. This is non-general funding going back to really put that back into shape and better shape and identify some of the things that we're going to receive as a result of this project going through the SMR. Mr. Chairman, that was my brief, one just kind of overview of what we're doing within our secretariat, outlines some of the big projects that we're focusing on, and we're standing by to answer any question that you may have.
Thank you for your work and the work of your staff. I did have a question, and I don't know if it's for you or for the Adjutant General. Last May, the governor deployed 100 Virginia National Guard troops to Texas, and I believe the mission was to intercept fentanyl that was coming across the border. And I was wondering if we could get a report on how much fentanyl was intercepted and how that mission worked out overall.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I think what we did was able to go and assist the Texas State Police and the Texas Guard. We were there to assist them in their efforts, being able to direct our migrants to proper channels to enter the country. And that was the focus that our guardsmen provided while they were there on site.
So it was helping with illegal border crossings rather than looking for fentanyl? Or?
It was working with the state police and state guard force, assisting them in their efforts.
Thank you. Are there other questions? Thank you for the presentation and thanks for your work.
You're welcome.
Okay. I saw Senator Obenshain had come and gone, so I think what we should do is move on to our next presentation from the Department of Criminal Justice Services on Community Violence Reduction Grants Programs. And want to welcome the Director of the Department of Criminal Justice Services, a former delegate, Jackson Miller.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman. Nice to see you, esteemed members of the committee. Good to see you all this morning. Today I'll be going over the agency's administration of the funding that you've dedicated to community violence intervention across the Commonwealth of Virginia. We'll cover three programs devoted to the topic. It's the Firearms Intervention and Prevention Program, Operation Ceasefire Program, and the Safer Communities Program. And we'll also briefly touch on what DCGS has done prior to the 2023 dedicated to violence reduction strategies, and then also share what our next steps will be. Could you go to slide 3, please? Oh, I'll be doing it? I thought someone else was. Let me see if I can figure this out, sir. There we go. As you can see, or as you may recall, during the 2022 special session, you appropriated non-reverting funds to be administered by DCJS for Firearms Violence Intervention and Prevention Grant Fund and the Operation Ceasefire Fund. The Firearms Violence Intervention and Prevention Program allocated funds to local government, community-based organizations, and hospitals, while Operation Ceasefire funds were appropriated for implementing violent crime reduction strategies, providing training for law enforcement officers and prosecutors, and providing equipment to law enforcement agencies as well. The chart here in front of you shows how the monies were broken down. Happy to answer any questions there. Under the Virginia Violence Intervention Program, as mentioned, this program was created to provide funds to local governments and community-based organizations and hospitals for the purposes of supporting and implementation of evidence-informed gun violence intervention and prevention programs. We really appreciate this as our federal funds have been greatly reduced, and the hospital intervention programs have been funded by this grant. And we can't tell you how appreciative we are of that, because that's one of the most effective community-based programs we have for violence intervention. It kind of stops the violence right there at the hospital. Again, this used to be funded through federal funds, which have now been reduced so dramatically. That was one of the first ones on the chopping block. That's really important to us, DCJS. All right. Slide 6. As you can see here on slide 5, the appropriations language states that the funds shall also support firearm suicide prevention, safe firearm removal practices from persons prohibited from possessing firearms, including subjects of domestic violence protective orders, persons convicted of prohibitory crimes, and persons subject to substantial risk orders.
If you could just bear with us for a moment. Senator Obenshain's arrived, and we need to take up his bill so it can be ready for full committee. So we'll come back to you in just a moment if that's okay.
That's perfectly fine, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, sir.
Okay. Senator Obenshain, you had SB 469.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, yes, Senate Bill 469 deals with fentanyl in a little bit different way from some of the other bills. This bill addresses misbranded and adulterated drugs. One of the big problems are counterfeit pills that contain fentanyl, and this makes a Class 6 felony, elevates from a Class 2 misdemeanor to a Class 6 felony to these cases involving counterfeit and misbranded and adulterated drugs. Second, under federal law, pill presses are illegal. This makes it illegal under Virginia state law. As a matter of fact, Congressperson Spanberger has called for increasing the federal penalties for the possession of pill presses and dye and other equipment to encapsulating equipment, other equipment that's used to create these drugs. This makes it a Class 6 felony in Virginia to possess encapsulating machines and tableting machines, pill presses. And the third thing that it does is, much as we did with children who are in homes or locations where methamphetamine is being manufactured, this it does the same thing with respect to manufacturing drugs with fentanyl, makes it conforms the offense to the offense that exists for manufacturing meth in the presence of children.
Okay, and this was, I think, sort of a unanimous recommendation of the Courts Committee. There were 2 abstentions, but 13 were in favor. Do members have any questions for Senator Obenshain? Okay. There's a motion to report and a second. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay, thank you.
My apologies for interrupting Director Miller, but thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Director, please come forward again. Thank you. We were, I believe we're on the
Slide 5.
Slide 5 about the Firearm Violence Intervention and Prevention Grant Fund.
And about to move on to Slide 6. Thanks, Mr. Chairman. This slide shows a timeline of awards to date for the Firearm Violence Intervention and Prevention Program. DCGS has issued 3 solicitations and offered awards for earmarked funds under this program. The first competitive solicitations targeted the provision of hospital-based violence intervention programming. It's very successful. As I said earlier, it's evidence-based approach to addressing community gun violence. In December of 2022, the CGSB awarded $5 million under the Firearm Violence Intervention Program across 2 years, beginning July 2023 for hospital-based violence intervention programming in 6 hospitals across the Commonwealth of Virginia. In addition to the solicitation in December of 2022, DCGS awarded $1 million to Norfolk and $500,000 to Portsmouth as directed by the appropriations language. In January of 23, we released another competitive grant opportunity for this grant program, offering funding to replicate promising practices that have demonstrated effectiveness in other states. The solicitation outlined the availability of $1.3 million to fund the implementation of new prevention and intervention projects or enhancement of existing projects. Under this grant opportunity, eligible applicants were community-based and local nonprofit agencies. The maximum grant award was determined by the organization's size and service area, with awards ranging from a maximum of $25,000 to a maximum of $100,000 per year. We received 21 applications in response to the grant solicitations, totaling a little over $1.4 million. The overall makeup of the application pool consisted of numerous local private, nonprofit organizations, including several faith-based organizations and 1 national nonprofit. The DCJS staff reviewed the grants prior to making recommendations to the Criminal Justice Services Board. In reviewing the grants, they identified that several grantees were relatively new grantees, having just been awarded grants under some of the related funding items. I'll touch on some of those in a few minutes. Rather than fund new grants to those entities, staff recommended giving the current grantees time to develop a history of performance by executing the existing programs before receiving funds for additional programs or program expansion. We also identified that some of the applications were not fully developed. As a result, the CGSB awarded funding for just 5 applicants for the 12-month period of July 1, 2023 to June 30th, 2024 for awards totaling just under $200,000. Since the dollars remain in the fund and don't revert to the general fund, we've opted to take a thoughtful approach in administering these funds. We want to make sure they're used wisely and properly. Rather than acting hastily, we are enhancing our staff capacity by using administrative funds to hire and provide technical assistance to these groups and these applicants, because previously had not been eligible for a lot of our grants. And what we're trying to do is get them up to speed to be able to receive these grants. Recently, DCGS provided a 3rd competitive funding opportunity under the violence, under this grant. This opportunity funding went towards local government for assessment and local coordination planning, which is another identified area of needing support. In December of last year, we awarded 6 local government agencies funding for this purpose. And here you can see where the funding went between local law enforcement, nonprofits, and local government. The Operation Ceasefire Program grant, just like the Firearm Violence Intervention Program, is another non-reverting fund created during the 2022 special session that you all had administered by the Department of Criminal Justice Services. We received $2.5 million for fiscal year 23, and that amount was increased during the 2023 special session to $17.5 million. Eligible entities for grant funds include local Commonwealth attorneys, local, law enforcement agencies, local units of government, community-based organizations, social service agencies, and for the purposes of engaging in group violence and intervention efforts. Group violence intervention is specified in the Appropriations Act as comprehensive law enforcement, prosecutorial, and community-based initiatives, substantially similar to Operation Ceasefire that was implemented in Boston, and gang reduction programs that have been implemented in Richmond and in Los Angeles. DCJS issued 2 solicitations under Operation Ceasefire Grant Program to date. The first solicitation targeted programmatic support for the implementation of local violent crime strategies. Eligible applicants for this solicitation included state and local government agencies, local law enforcement, Commonwealth attorneys' offices, and community-based and nonprofit organizations. We received 31 applications in response to the grant solicitation, totaling just under $10 million, far above the $4.8 million available for awarding at the time. Out of the 31 applications, 17 were recommended for funding at the requested or slightly reduced levels of what the groups asked for. We awarded grants to the Office of the Attorney General, the Virginia State Police, local governments, and nonprofit agencies. The second solicitation was released in the fall of 2023 with focus on prosecutorial resources to address violent crime. This solicitation was open to local Commonwealth attorneys' offices only. We received 21 grant applications totaling $7.3 million. On December 7th, 2023, the Criminal Justice Services Board awarded 14 grants totaling $5.4 million for a 36-month period beginning January 1, 2024 through December 31st, 2026.
Director, can I ask you to just detail a little bit more how the funds are used, the ones that go to the Office of the Attorney General and the federal prosecutors? My understanding is that they can be used not just for deterrence, but also for social services for program participants. And I was wondering how that works for someone in the program.
I believe Mark Farrow was going to be here from the Attorney General's office. He's not here. I'm not sure my staff can give you detailed questions on that. Can you answer that, Greg?
They put their application into 3 categories: prevention, intervention, and enforcement. OEG's Office of Partnership with the Department of Social Services, the Office of Faith-Based Initiative, the Violence Reduction Program. They also reached out and working with local public housing authorities such as enforcement and City of Richmond. These are pretty much programs directed to youth violence prevention as well as faith-based efforts to address violent crime.
So they can do a multi-pronged approach with those funds from Operation Ceasefire. Okay. And does that differ a lot from the first set of grants you talked about, the Firearm Violence Prevention, Intervention and Prevention Fund? Is that a different approach or just different grantors?
It complements the approach. These firearm funds will disseminate to multiple jurisdictions. Some are not what you call embedded into the state-wide ceasefire program, but also complements some of the efforts that are attached to, like, say, for instance, Suffolk, just core closest, Chesapeake, Portsmouth, to help them with their address violent crime.
Thank you. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. On this slide, you'll see how the funds were distributed and the number of grants distributed and to what type of agencies. The Safer Communities Program. So this is a program that you all created in last year's special session. The Safer Communities Program is part of a non-reverting fund of $10 million administered by DCJS. The appropriations language directed us that $9.5 million would be dedicated to creating a pilot program in the cities of Norfolk, Portsmouth, and Richmond. The Safer Communities program was developed to fund holistic community-based strategies to be used to address the root causes and conditions of community violence. These strategies are to be evidence-based, informed, and community-driven. They can include after-school programs and mentorships, connections to education and economic opportunities, trauma-informed mental health care, credible messengers and violence interrupters, and strategies to build trust between law enforcement agencies and community stakeholders. This requires each of the localities to employ a full-time position dedicated to planning and violence interruptions. So the rest of our slides are just breakdowns of how our grants are distributed. We're happy to answer questions about those. We are hoping you continue the funding that is in the budget for this year, as I think you're hearing from your localities that these funds are actually effective.
Yes,
And yes, ma'am. I know your chief of police has been very happy with them.
Mr. Chairman, yes, absolutely. I talked to my chief of police just last night, and he said it's doing a lot to help. And as a matter of fact, if you pick up the newspaper this morning, you see there were 2 more shootings in Portsmouth last night.
Yes, ma'am.
But it's helping bring it down, because I think there was the one day that we were in finance, probably the first time I really broke down and cried since I've been here, when there were 4 shootings of youth under 18 in Portsmouth in the same night. And that was just a bit more than I could take. And so the Safer Community program is working.
We're doing our best to make that work, Senator, absolutely. And if I could real quick, we have Tracy Jenkins is our division director for programs and services, and with her is Laurel Marks, who's in charge of juvenile prevention crime. I think I'm getting it a little bit wrong. And Greg Hopkins, who works with Laurel. Greg is very, very connected to some of these cities, police chiefs and prosecutors, and faith-based and also community-based groups.
Yes.
So he's done a fantastic job making sure these funds are getting to the right locations. These 2 are the ones that review the grants and make sure that the grants have actual results and can show metrics of improvement. And they're very selective, and because a lot, as we were talking about earlier, because there's a lot of groups that apply that don't have a record, a history, we're also trying to get them up and running to make sure that they are able to, if they can receive these funds, that they're able to implement the programs effectively. We're lucky at DCGS to have such a great staff for these programs.
Well, on behalf of Chief Jenkins and the Portsmouth Police Department, I thank you.
Thank you, Senator.
Mr. Chairman?
Yeah, Senator Morrison.
Yep, thank you. Jackson, to what extent is DCJS aware of the epidemic that we're having of guns being stolen from cars? They're like vending machines. Richmond's averaging somewhere around 700 a year. We had 1,300 in a 4-year period in the Lynchburg area. It's Portsmouth, it's Norfolk, it's Virginia Beach, it's Southwest Virginia. I've got a bill in to try to get something done that I could think maybe the governor could sign. But is there any thinking going on as to how in all of the work you're doing here, much of it very, very good, as to how to address that problem? Is there any thinking going on, or is that even part of your discussion?
To be honest, Senator, that is not specifically a part of our discussion at this point. I have not seen your bill. Clearly, if it passes, it may become a very important part of our discussions. But I do have a very thin staff working a lot of grants that you guys have given over the last few years. That would probably be something more that Virginia State Police would have a lot more answers to than DCJS. But we would be happy to try to tackle that program. As you guys know, DCJS, as we like to joke, is kind of like, we're like the Petri dish, or kind of like we're Mikey, we'll try anything.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman,
Yes,
might just
if
to
you
follow
give it to
up.
us, we'll tackle it.
Thank you. It is, it's great that we're dealing with the remediation of these problems and trying to deal with youth and find alternatives for them. And the hospital-based stuff, I was technical assistance advisor to the Obama administration's National Forum on Youth Violence Prevention. Just saw some great things going on the state, solving violence problems actually with transportation issues to get kids out of tough neighborhoods with the ability to move around and get away from it, where the streets out in front of their house are dangerous, going other places in the community or not. And so a lot of innovative things that are done out there. But just to put a word in, is that, remediation is great, trying to deal with these problems after they've occurred and to try to, talk to folks. But until we deal with this supply problem of the firearms that we're spending all this money trying to remediate the damage people do with them and to prevent the damage people do with them, if we don't attack and tackle the supply problem that's coming out, this has happened ever since we changed the law in 2010, allowing vehicles to have guns in them that are merely secured without a concealed weapons permit. Henrico County, every 10th car that is broken into, a gun is stolen. It's just a crisis. And if you could, take a look at some of the things going on in the supply area, it would be appreciated.
We would be happy to team with the state police and try and find solutions to that, Senator.
Thank you, Director Miller, for the presentation. And I had one more question to follow on what Senator Lucas was talking about on the programs. In terms of standardized metrics, what would those entail, since so many factors can lead to violent crime trends in each community? How do we assess whether the programs overall or the grantees are, where we get the most bang for the buck?
Again, sir, I'd like to go to the subject matter experts of either Ms. Marks or Mr. Hopkins to give a better answer on that.
What we decided to do is develop full performance metrics. Say, for instance, if there's a low.
Could you either speak up or come to the mic, maybe? Thank you.
All right, thank you. In our development of performance metrics, we look at 3 areas, which is prevention, intervention, and enforcement. Oftentimes with nonprofits, we see positive youth development program. And so we don't want to necessarily look at pretty much inputs and outputs, but how do we determine the quality of life and changing the quality of life of an individual? And so a lot of the programs are sort of repetitious as to, we're doing, credible messengers, we're doing after-school activities for youth, but already targeting the right youth in the right community that are affected by violent crime. And in doing so, what we do is try to give these organizations metrics before they submit an application, just to get an idea of how to, coordinate their application, but also develop their program if they actually fit into the desired overall goal of that municipality to reduce violent crime.
Okay, thank you. I'd love to talk to you more about this offline. Are
All
there
right.
any other questions from members of the committee? Okay. Thank you for being here. Thanks for your work on these programs.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Appreciate the committee's time. Thank you.
With that, the committee for today will rise and we'll reconvene the full committee at 9 o'clock.
That's correct.
The Senate of Virginia. Rich